Yeah, so a few words about me. Born and raised in Poland, but then I work and live in a couple of different countries. Some of you might have already heard. I've been living in Italy for 2 months now. And yes, I'm a Facet 5 practitioner. I've been using Facet 5 in my professional practice as HR professional, HR executive, and professional coach for, I think, between 3 and 4 years now. And today I'm going to talk about something that is super important. I think it's fascinating, and I like to call it self-awareness or deep self-awareness. Right? And I'm going to talk about how we approach that at KYPI, which is the tech startup that I'm working for. So this is what is going to happen today. Um, but before we go, there, I'm assuming we have drivers here, and I'm looking at the chat window now, so please confirm, are you a driver? I guess that is my working hypothesis that there's drivers. Yes, absolutely, we have drivers. So what I did was fantastic, so many drivers. Yeah, I sort of expected that. Guys, what I did is I prepared a Menti, a small survey that is going to introduce us to our discussion, and I'm going to share. First I'm going to share my screen again, another screen, which is the Menti screen. Where is it? It's here, so you can see the question that I'm asking, and you can see the QR code. Or you can go to menti.com and use the code that is written at the top of the screen. But I will also share. Yeah, I'll also share the voting link in the chat window now to facilitate the voting process. And the big question is, yeah, I mean, if you consider, your driving experiences, and when you sort of, when you compare yourself to others, how good of a driver do you think you are? Okay, we got 6 votes in. Yeah, so that's always striking. A lot of good drivers in the room. Right? A lot of good drivers in the room, and yeah, some people who say, yeah, they are slightly worse than most, because the essence of the question is really to sort of compare yourself against the average, right? So where are you? Where are you? Okay, we've got 13 answers. How many are we in the meeting? 24. So I'd love to have a few more. So you can either use the link that you can see in the chat window, or you can go to menti.com with your mobile, with your computer, and use the code. All right. Okay. Okay. So let's try discussing these results. Do you see anything particular when you look at these results? Something that troubles you? Any comments? Anything? I'm looking at the chat window. I'll tell you in a while what I'm thinking, but I'm very curious. Yeah, people self-rate highly. Absolutely. Absolutely. People self-rate highly. Anything else? From statistic, yeah, people should have more confidence. I mean, like even more confidence than that. Um, yes. Okay. I'm not so sure about that, but okay. Okay. Um, and if you look at the results if you look at how the question was formulated, and if you look at the results from statistical point of view, do you see any discrepancy or aberration here, perhaps? Yeah, maybe we're unaware of our flaws. Maybe we are. Because, what I'm seeing here, and it's always, I mean, the outcome of this exercise is always the same, right? Is always the same. Which is that more people rate themselves as better than others in terms of their driving skills, which is statistically impossible. Yeah, because the question is than most. So basically, the the normal result that we should have and obtain in this kind of exercise, right, should be that half of us rate themselves as slightly better or definitely better than most, and the other half should rate themselves as slightly worse or definitely worse than most. Yeah. And the outcome is always like that. Obviously, the driving is it's a very tricky thing. We always like to think about ourselves as good drivers, but research shows that it's pretty much the same with many other things. So yeah, going back to the deck, and it's here. Going back to the deck. Um, there's somebody that wrote a book about that, and that somebody, and you probably know the book or might have heard about the book, or the person, you might have seen her great TED or YouTube presentations. So Tasha, she wrote a book about self-awareness. The book is called Insight, and basically, she says that based on her research, 95% of us, we think we're self-aware, right? So this is our self-perception about our self-awareness, right? But what is the reality? The reality is that only 15% of us are really self-aware, whereas 8 in 10, which is 80%, think that they are self-aware. So the tricky thing about self-awareness is that we tend to kind of be very confident about our self-awareness, and we think we're good at that, but then it turns out that according to others, we're not so good about that. So this is basically, right, what I wanted to discuss with you today, and how are we going to do that. I'm going to make like a short introduction about the self-discovery and just how it all started. Then I'm going to give you a context of the company that I'm with, KYP AI, which is this tech startup that I'm working for. Then I'm going to tell you about, what we did with Festival 5 and how have we been working with the tool for the last 2 years. I'll tell you a little bit about overcoming skepticism in the environment that I'm with. That was especially, in the early days. I'll tell you a little bit about what I like to call, hacking the development equation. We'll talk a little bit about Darwinism and intentionality in development, and then I'll make a wrap up and I'll share with you our 3 most important lessons learned from using Facet 5 over the last 2 years in our organization. So, yeah, the first part, which is this one, mirror, mirror on the wall, mirror, mirror on the wall. It all started, I think, with ancient Greeks, and probably even before that. So this is what with what Socrates said, to know yourself is the beginning of wisdom. So basically, what he wanted to convey, I suppose, was that self-awareness, knowing yourself, is where it all starts. And I profoundly agree with that statement, right? So I really, like to look at it almost like every day, And then, when you think of it, self-awareness is everywhere in the pop culture. So mirror, mirror on the wall, right? Who's the fairest of them all? I think we all know the story. So the magic mirror was used by the evil queen to find out who was the fairest of them all. Each time the queen asked the question, the mirror would respond affirmatively to the queen that she was the one. She was the most beautiful, the fairest of them all. Up until one day, right, when the mirror unexpectedly said something else. It replied, "Yeah, that you're full of fair, that is, but there was somebody else. There was the Snow White character that was fairer than the queen." And I don't know if you remember how the story followed. So the queen basically hired an assassin to put her rival to death, right? And then the way I like to think about it is that it didn't have to go that way. And basically, an advice that I would give to Queen would be to, shut up and listen to the response and try to kind of be more reflective about what she heard from the mirror. And here is, how it connects from my experience and also from research. Uh, the problem is that, as human beings, most of us, we have those well-developed defense mechanisms that protect us from feedback that we perceive as threatening, right? Feedback that we perceive as threatening. It's not that we're opposing to all feedback. It's that we prefer to receive feedback that is positive, not so much the one that is negative. And that's very natural. That's very natural, right? And this is, I remember when I was starting my career 20 years ago, that was one of the best career, advice that I've ever, gotten from anyone. Was one person told me, I mean, always ask yourself a question, who's your mirror? Who's your mirror? And then, the the other version of this question that I like even better is, who will tell you the truth? Yes, who's your mirror, as in who will tell you the truth? Who, kind of speak to you about your true reflection, right? And the problem, and you might have heard about that as well, is that there's this difference in terms of, how we give feedback or how people give feedback. There's that difference and differentiation that we can make between people that are nice and kind. Nice people, they tell you nice things because they want you to feel better. Maybe they want something from you, so they will tell you nice things. And kind people are the ones who deeply care about you for this reason or another reason. And they are the ones that will tell you the truth because they want you to understand how to improve, right? So again, who's your mirror? Who's your mirror doesn't really meaning, who will tell you nice things. It's the question about who will tell you the truth. And then, okay, self-awareness. So we all understand about, I think, what self-awareness is. So I'm not going to debate that. But then I promised that we'd go beyond the surface. So, deep self-awareness. What this deep self-awareness concept really is for me. So when I try to um, define something, I always go for dictionary first, Cambridge Dictionary of English, or, Merriam-Webster's Okay, so deep, what does deep really mean? So this is the dictionary definition of what deep is. But then I go even deeper, right? So what is the deep self-awareness and how it is different from just, superficial self-awareness? And the superficial self-awareness is really, on the surface level, being able to answer, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Typically, what candidates do in an interview, right? The question that everyone expects, and people say something. So most of us, yeah, we have this, at least this like first level self-awareness. But what is really, the deep self-awareness? What's so deep about it, right? And I think, it relates to 4 dimensions. The first dimension is that it's profoundly penetrative. So it's really going beyond the obvious. So it's like not the first level, is the going deeper towards the second, the third level. So that's the first one. The second dimension is that it's extensively detailed. So it's not just about knowing maybe the what and the how, but also the why. So in that sense, also going much deeper. The third dimension, and the way I like to think about it, is that it's very, comprehensively holistic. So it encompasses all the dimensions of the self. Yeah. The emotional, psychological, spiritual, intellectual. So in that sense, it's all encompassing, like fully fledged, self-awareness. And last but not least, we have another one, which is intensely reflective, which is all about actively engaging with one's inner thoughts and feelings, often requiring a significant degree of vulnerability and honesty with yourself. Again, going back to the previous argument that we tend to receive feedback that is positive rather than, negative. But this is not how we grow. This is not how we develop ourselves, right? So again, penetrative, detailed, holistic, and reflective. And it's all very intense, and it should be intense, and it all should happen at the same time. Good. Fantastic. Yeah. I'm looking at the chat window. If there's any comments, please do share your comments and remarks on the fly. Then there's, if you think about self-awareness, and I know that I'm not going to say anything extraordinary here, but just still wanted to make this remark that, the self-awareness is the internal self-awareness, which is how do I see myself, right? And then there is how others see me and whether I know how they see me, right? So internal, external self-awareness, two dimensions, and this is also how we go deeper about it. And obviously at the intersection, you will have the famous Johari window that I think everyone heard about or knows. So I'm not going to talk about the arena, the blind spot, but this is super important. The difference about how do I see myself, how do others see me, yeah, and the intersection of it. Then at the end of the day, just closing this first part of of explaining why there's this enormous attention that I pay to self-awareness is that I see it as a super skill. So for me personally, based on my experience, but also based on research that I believe in, it's not a trait. So self-awareness is not innate. It's not something that we're born with. We may have certain predispositions towards it, but basically it's a skill. So it's a skill that can be learned. It's transferable skill. Yeah? So you can get better at it, and this is super important. This is, by the way, and obviously, how Facet 5 can help. I like to call it like a meta competence, so like a higher order ability, something that enables the acquisition of other competences, or as it is reading on the slide, an overarching ability under which other competencies shelter. And yes, I do believe, and there's a like ton of research proving that it's a prerequisite for the development of other competencies, right? So it's super, super important. And we may say that's a foundation upon which to grow, both professionally and personally. This is super important, and I'm going to talk about it in more detail in a while. I can see the comment. I love that message of perhaps at the element of time can retain that self-awareness over time throughout conversations, situations. Yes, absolutely. I mean, because it's not that, okay, I mean, again, I'm speaking from my own experience, 20 years of professional experience, living my life with all my, humanity and mistakes also on a personal level, having divorced and all that, so you can never be good enough in terms of self-awareness. It's never like a finished process. It's a continuous journey, right? And because you might be self-aware enough in that specific context, in that specific point in time, but then you're removed from that context. You're in a different context, and then the times have changed, and maybe that self-awareness that you develop up until now, it's not enough anymore. So you have to adjust, right? Because the context changes, the situation changes, the people around change, the people around you change. So it's a constant work of self-improvement, and it's a skill that I believe we have to work at our entire life. So KYPAI, why it is super important, and why it is, I think, fascinating about what we did here together. Because so what is KYPAI, and why in this company logic is so important, and why it is more important than intuition here. We'd have to look at what we're doing as a company. So we're a deep tech startup that was funded 4 years ago. So we produce enterprise SaaS software as a service. So it's a software that helps companies understand and change their processes. So it captures enormous amounts of information and uses AI and machine learning to analyze it and propose improvements in processes. It's also looks at the productivity, so looks at processes, people, and technology trifecta. So it's something really impressive, what it can do. And I joined this company 2 years ago. I was invited by the founders to join the team as one of the early joiners. We were a little bit more than 20 people there. That was 2021, September 2021. Seed stage, so still very early stage with some initial traction on the market. Investors, and today we're 70 plus people. So you see, from 20 to over 70 people, we're probably going to be around 100 people early next year. So the company is growing. There's a lot of market traction, a lot of interest. The technology is really amazing, and I vividly remember why I decided to kind of abandon my corporate life, my corporate HR career, and joined that company. And it was for three reasons. First, because I saw amazing product. Then, because I saw great people and founders that really wanted to build a great team, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. And then, because I saw amazing investors, and it was like mind blowing for me. Why? Because one of the investors is this gentleman. At that point, when I was joining American VC fund called Tola Capital, that is linked to Bill Gates Foundation, hopped on board and decided that this technology was super interesting. So I decided, yeah, I mean, and this is the moment. This is my window of opportunity, and I decided to join the company. And this company obviously lives off data. So for us, data is super important. We provide data to companies so that they can make better decisions, right? So this is a little bit of what we believe in. A couple of quotes from this gentleman that is not related to the company. But basically, this is our approach. This is what we kind of evangelize. This is what we tell our customers. And by the way, we are walking the talk also with regard to people management, right? So when I was joining the company, I asked the founders, so if you were so crazy about the data, if you were so profoundly interested in what is the meaning behind data, what if I can show you a tool that will give you some data about your people? And they said, yeah, let's do that. Let's try it. Yeah, and this is how the Facet5 story started. And basically, what is the objective? When you're in a startup company, why are you doing that? Right? It's not just any job. You want to build a unicorn, so a company that will be worth at least 1 billion, right? And there's this dream that we're chasing. Go for an IPO and become rich people. Not the most important thing in life, but still would be nice. A nice side effect. And basically the way I see it, if you want to build a unicorn, a great company, you only need three things. It's super simple. 1, 2, 3. The first one is a great product. That one we have. Great investors and great team. Great team. So great people on board. You can't do anything without great people. Sounds like a cliche, but it's so true. So true, right? And then, okay, best team meaning what? Best team meaning what? And there is this fine distinction that I like to make, is that you can have either a team of stars. A team of stars is something, is a situation where you have extraordinary individuals working together, not necessarily as a team, not necessarily in terms of perfect collaboration, but they are just brilliant individuals, right? Or an alternative is that you can have the star team. So maybe people who are not maybe, the best in what they do, but together they create synergies. So together they are just a star team, extraordinary team that can beat other teams. And sometimes star teams beat teams of stars. And when I asked my founders, so what is our objective here? What is our approach? How are we going to build this great company? And I asked them, so which of the strategies would you ask me to execute? And say both. They say they wanted both, right? So said, okay, so let's try to use Facet5 to make that happen. So this is what we did. This is what we did. And this is like the foundational element of it. So we decided from that day on that Facet5 questionnaire, assessments, and 90-minute feedback would be an intrinsic part of everyone's onboarding. So everyone who is coming to the company is required to take that assessment and is invited to a feedback session. And we make these explicit and kind of conditional in the recruitment process. So if you're not interested, if for some reason you don't want it, then okay, don't come, because this is the way we work, right? It was a little bit tricky in the beginning because we had the initial 20 people, and the question was, how to work with them, how to convince them that it was something, worth checking out. But this is what is happening. So everyone, ideally in their first week in the company, goes through the assessment, goes through the questionnaire, and goes through the individual feedback, right? What else are we doing? Then usually after 3 to 4 weeks, right, after they discuss it with maybe their colleagues, maybe with their supervisor, maybe with their wives, husbands, and life partners, maybe sometimes with their children. And I have really great stories to share about that. They can come back to HR, to me or my colleague, because there's already two of us, and we can schedule a follow-up session. So that they can share, what were their reflections after reading it the second time, the third time, after maybe discussing with their wives and husbands and maybe their children, or their mirrors, right? People who are their mirrors. So this is what we're doing. And so some people go for that, and this is not obligatory, but most people do that. And sometimes we sort of incentivize them to do that. So we encourage them. So if a month passes and there is no follow-up whatsoever from their side, I kind of ping them, I message them saying, hey, shall we have maybe another 15, 20, 30 minutes discussion about, what you did with that, what you're thinking, whether, it sort of convinced you, yes, no, right? What we're also doing is, and approximately 20 people take that, 20% of our people, 25 to 30% of our people take that path. So some people go deeper and say, okay, I want to, think deeper about my strengths and risks. I don't like using the word weaknesses, right? And I want to kind of translate it into my individual development plan. So this is what we also help them doing, and also execute on that and make check-ins and see whether they are, on plan or not. What else are we doing? Well, yes, leaders use it on a daily basis to engage with individuals, especially, with onboarding. It helps us to speed up building the rapport and the relationship with the newcomers for the managers, because they can see the part of the report where you can see, what is the best way to manage them, to leverage their potential, how to give them feedback, how to delegate tasks to them, how to engage them in goal setting, etc. So this is something that we're using, and each one of our supervisors and leaders, they know how to do it, right? And they are required to do it. So there's also a lot of kind of self-awareness and belief in that it works. We're also doing team workshops, and I'm very happy because this sort of happens simultaneously. This happens almost, yeah. I mean, so it wasn't really forced. So that was the idea, that maybe one day people would be mature enough and they would ask for more, and they did. So it happened sort of spontaneously. So they came to me and said, maybe we could run like a team workshop to understand our team dynamics. So we're also doing that. And also repeating that each time there is like a significant reconfiguration in the team. So new people are joining. We're a fast growing company. So we have to repeat that, say every year or every 6 months sometimes. Yeah, and then obviously we're using it in recruitment processes for some of the senior, especially leadership roles. And it's not eliminatory. It's more to sort of understand, what is the positions profile, what is the ideal candidate profile, and when there is a mismatch, and then we dig deeper. Not only because we want to make sure that the person can perform in that role, but also, remembering that being too much and in being outside of the comfort zone in too many dimensions might be detrimental to your performance and also to your job satisfaction and engagement. So we're very honest about those situations where the job might be not compatible with the person's personality. Yeah. So and there's a lot of very kind of profound, reflections around that. Among our leadership. And yeah, this is what I wanted to mention. So what was a critical success factor is the 100% dedication from the founders. So it's not only that they said, yeah, let's do it. It's a great idea. It sort of correlates with our, us thinking about the data as the ultimate vehicle to make business decisions, also decisions about people. but they walk the talk. So they believe in it. They ask me if they have, troubles interpreting this or that. That we sit down and we kind of, we look at the details. So it has really been an amazing journey, and I'll wrap it up a little bit later. And I think, after 2 years, what what was super important was the repetition and consistency. Repetition meaning that, there's newcomers all the time. And it's not like, okay, we did it once, somebody, went through their facet 5 assessment and feedback 2 years ago, and it's over. We don't have time for them. So we try to kind of reinstate that sense of importance and sort of urgency that this is super important, and this is something that you should, revisit and revisit and revisit and revisit again. And just because you had, a good reflection about yourself in terms of your self-awareness 2 years ago, it doesn't mean that you would have the same self-reflection today. Yeah, so we encourage them to repeat that exercise, which sort of, relates back to the remarkable question you had some time ago, which is the time dimension in it. And yeah, I promise you I'll talk a little bit about skepticism. So please do remember, I used to work in retail companies, food retail, big corporations, food retail, beauty retail, fashion retail, e-commerce retail, and then suddenly I find myself, working with, super smart engineers, right? And sometimes, like really, when you think about stereotypes, your typical view of engineer, it was really what I was facing, and I was understanding very little. So I was thinking, how do I turn it into success? So how do I convince them to actually trust me and sort of, go through this assessment process? Now it's a policy, so I can say to our candidates, that when you join the company, you'll be going through that process. Do you like it? Yes, no. If you don't like it, if you don't want it, don't join us, right? But then in the beginning, it was the 20 people that were, in the company. There was this new HR guy coming, and so I was sort of trying to think of, okay, what am I dealing with? What is the challenge going to be? So I was trying to think of, what do I know about, software engineers? And that was more or less the idea that I had, right? So you see a lot of text on the slides, right? Yes, and they are very smart people. So they are analytical, logical, technically proficient, introverted, or socially reserved sometimes. I'm the opposite, not very introverted and not very socially reserved. And then there are practical and detail oriented. So how do I make connections with them, right? So this slide is a super bad slide because there's a lot of reading. You'll probably see reading through that, but I'll make your life easy for you. Here's what is important. So this is how I approach that. So I try to kind of break it down into what do I know about, engineers and how their brains work, right? And how do I sort of cater to that? How do I adjust, what I learned, like working with leaders and leadership talent, and how do I do that successfully with engineering talent, right? And I thought, okay, they are logical, they love problem solving, so maybe I can help them solve some problems that they have. And they love science, so maybe if I tell them that this is science-based, they will listen, right? They love systems, and I see a lot of kind of systemic thinking in the Facet 5 model. They're introverted, so maybe I have to really kind of adjust the way I conduct sessions based on the type of kind of introverted versus extroverted person that I have in front of me. And then details, yeah, details, fantastic, because there's so many details in the Facet 5 report. And then practical, yes, because there's a lot of practical insights. So it's not, the theoretical HR mumbo jumbo. It's something very practical, something that you can take. And you have a lot of things written there that basically tell you what you can do, start doing differently next Monday. So it was really the tool, but you really needed to understand, how to tackle the challenge and to, how to address the skepticism, the initial skepticism. And there was a lot of it, right? So I was dealing at least with a couple of problems. The first one was perceptions of HR. So, like paper pushing people, not very effective, not very kind of evidence-based, a little bit too emotional sometimes. I'm talking about stereotypes, but that was I was confronting, right? Then unclear intentions. So some people were asking me, outwardly, they were saying, yeah, so after that, if the result is not good, am I going to be fired? What if I don't fit? Right? So these were all the questions that I was getting from those engineers, yeah? And I needed to make them feel safe. And the answer was there's no good or bad answers. There's no good or bad results. Every result has a meaning, and we're here to discuss that meaning together. What it means for you, what it means for me, what it means for organization, right? So that was it. Also, some people, had experienced other psychometric assessments which were not conducted professionally. So there was a lot of, also this kind of bad legacy thing that I had to address. And obviously they were asking, okay, so what's in it for me? And WIIFM, what's in it for me? So why should I do that? What is the benefit for me? Right. So these were the four type of kind of questions or doubts or reasons why people were skeptical. And I can tell you, 80-90% were skeptical. And initially, not very much leaning into doing that, right? And I needed to convince them, and it was my answer, right? So the first thing I thought, okay, obviously it was a promise, right? So I was saying, I will try to improve your life. And people were, oh, how will you do that? And I said, what if I give you something that will help you to improve the quality of the relationship with the people that you care about? So I wasn't really talking about, what are the work-related benefits. No, I was really catering to that intrinsic need of actually, how do I improve my life in terms of the quality of the relationship with the people that I deeply care about, which is, our life partners, our children, family, friends. So that was the first trick, and it really worked with some people. There was the second thing was like, okay, money back guarantee. So I always like really telling them, you don't risk anything. If you don't like it, okay, you don't like it, but I guarantee you it's going to be great. Yeah, I'm really good at what I'm doing, and I'm also here to learn from you, but I guarantee that you're going to like it. So I was really kind of, very confident about what I can do. I was really believing in it. And it turned out to be quite contagious. And then obviously it was the ambassadors. So looking at all the people that I had in that initial cohort, I first talked to the ones which were more optimistic and more leaning into, yeah, let's give it a try. And they loved it. So I could say, yeah, now I have, customers who are happy about what I did with them. You should do it too. And it worked. Actually, we only had, in 2 years of history, we only had one colleague that refused to undergo that assessment, and that person decided to leave the company. There was an obvious culture mismatch in that case. So this was about the skepticism. And then I promise you, I will tell you a little bit about the intentionality of development. And this is something that sort of fascinates me. And again, drawing from my 20 years of experience in leadership development, it's really striking. You all probably recognize the guys with Charles Darwin, the evolution theory, and so the survival of the fittest. And please do reflect and think about, many companies or the companies that you're working for, or maybe that you used to work for, or maybe your clients, customers, and maybe your personal experiences. So many companies, or too many companies are thinking about leadership development or people development in a Darwinian manner. What does that mean? Well, basically, and by the way, there's a great book about that from Morgan McCall. It's called High Flyers. It's about people with high potential, and he writes about that phenomenon. And this Darwinian approach to developing people is sink or swim, right? So instead of really investing in people's development, we throw them into the deep waters, and then okay, let's see who can make it to the surface. They are the ones. Well, yeah, it's a way to think about it. But unfortunately, the research shows that the ones who make it to the surface, the ones who survive, are not necessarily the ones that you should bet on. And that is the problem with the Darwinian approach. That is not intentional. It's simply okay, the survival of the fittest, right? And so many organizations work like that, right? And then one of the consequences is that we have, so many narcissistic or Machiavellian, leaders in the boardrooms, and toxic cultures where, yeah, the survival of the fittest in a bad sense prevails, right? And there's also the individual perspective, which is, if you think about your development, there is like, okay, when I think about my development, and probably, hopefully, when you think about your development, there's three questions that you can ask yourself, or you should ask yourself, which are why, what, and how. So, and if I recall well, on an early session today with Grant was mentioning the what and how, talking about strengths, but basically what is what I should develop, how is how I should develop that. So, what is, for instance, I know I should work on my, I don't know, presentation skills or resilience, and how is, oh, I should, have a coach, or I should work with a mentor, or I should undergo a training in a classroom, or I do, whatever. And some people even start from backwards. So they start how, oh, so I need a training. Okay, but the training about what? Okay, so it's the what question. But the first question that you need to ask yourself is, why am I doing that? What is the purpose? Yeah, as an individual, and also as an organization, you can ask that question to your people. So when somebody tells you, I would like to work on my persuasion skills, okay, why? And this why is super important, and here's why. So it's like a typical scenario that I encounter in conversations that we have. When we start discussing the possible implications of facet 5, and also your sort of, self-assessment of your competencies for your development. And when we start crafting your individual development plan, so it's the black circle represents your current level of competence and skill, right? And then there's two scenarios. Yeah. What should I develop? Well, that depends on the why. The first why is, okay, because I want to work on my persuasion skills, because this is what is needed in my job. Maybe I'm a salesperson and I'm lacking those, persuasion skills, and I need that to improve my performance in my current job. Okay, that's a very valid why. That's a very valid motivation, and we can work on that. But maybe I'm a software engineer, but my dream is to lead teams, or my dream is to do something else, be in a customer success, or in, sales or pre-sales, whatever, right? So I want to sort of readjust my career. I want to do something else, right? And that is a different why. So maybe we should think about different whats and different hows, right? So again, from organizational perspective, the intentionality is about not going for this kind of sink or swim scenario. And then in terms of, individuals, is asking yourselves all three questions and starting with the why, or never forgetting about the why. Right. So time to summarize, and maybe then we have a moment for a short Q&A. So after 2 years, what have we learned? Because we've been doing exactly that. So everything that I told you is not just, theoretical. It's what was the context, how we think about self-awareness, that it is important. We dedicate a lot of time and resources and money to it. This is how, how we did it, and also, the organizational, not Darwinian approach, and also encouraging individuals to think about, all three questions, right? So this is what we learned. Again, 1, 2, 3, three things. So the first one is that obviously we've seen an an increase in individual awareness and in team self-awareness, right? So we see an increase in both, obviously, and it's like self-reported, but also we see many proofs for that, a lot of evidence, behavioral evidence for that. And if you think about the 4 scenarios, so the worst scenario, not our scenario, is the loss in the fog. So, people are not self-aware in team terms, organizations not self-aware. And there's a second scenario, which is the team of stars. So very self-aware people, but somehow not working as a team. And that's what we want, not our scenario. The third one, it seems like a mission impossible for me. I think it's impossible to have team self-awareness without having the individual awareness first, right? So the individual awareness is the foundation upon which you can build team or organizational awareness. So you can't really start with the top-down approach. You have to do both at the same. So you need to start with leadership, top-down. Why are we doing that? Why it is important? Why you need to start from the bottom, and you need to cover the lowest echelons of the organization, and then kind of it clicks. And yeah, I like to think that we're here, that we're at this, start team that we've been dreaming about. Ask me in 5 years whether we are this unicorn, whether we have this kind of world-class success, right? But I believe to think that we're on our way to becoming a star team at KYPAI, and what we see is less tension between people. I remember when I did like a sort of a debrief with our engineering folks a couple months after we started, and they were telling they were telling me before I thought, that my colleague, he was acting so weird, and I thought that he was being malicious, or he was doing that on purpose. Today, I do understand that he's simply very different from me, and it's his personality speaking, and there's no bad intentions there, and we have to kind of learn to work together in the most efficient manner. And sometimes instead of kind of going into conflict, or we can just laugh about it, because he's so predictable, and I know I'm so predictable. And I was coming from those sort of introverted engineers who were so fascinating and so rewarding. The other person I remember, uh she's she's a very talented woman. She also, she used to work in retail industry, and then sort of um, pivoted her career to software engineering as a great software tester, a quality assurance engineer, and the mother of three. And she told me that she has teenage children. Some of them already studying at the university, and she shared her first 5 results with her family. Yeah. So when I said, yeah, I mean, this is something that can improve the quality of your relationships with the ones that you care about, she went the extra mile. So she went home and she showed them, yeah. So this is me. What do you think about it? And I remember what she told, and she shared that story in the in a company meeting. She said, yeah, her children said, mother, mommy, I mean, it's you. I mean, what it says is absolutely you. And today they are laughing about it, yeah, because I mean, at some point, maybe you should admit, yeah, this is who I am, this is me, and deal with that, right? So it's not really about kind of forcing yourself to change everything. So I can say that with those stories, I can say that at least with in some cases I delivered on the promise of making people's lives better, right? Obviously, again, it's about intentionality. So maybe 10 or 20% people will have that really deep, 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 deep reflection. But she did, and many others did. So this is really what makes me happy. So obviously better decisions. So maybe we will not force some people to take jobs that they shouldn't, take because they are not jobs for them. Highly engaged people, and higher performance, higher, because we see situations where actually, instead of kind of going ballistic and kind of going into confrontation, we can work with one another, right, in a better way, because we understand that there's differences, and those differences may cloud our judgment. So this is super, super important. On leadership level, in my relationship with other leaders in the company, and with the founders themselves, it's like we gained like three amazing things. The first one is that we have this understanding, this kind of common language. So when I say, I mean, what you're seeing in that candidate, or what you're seeing in that situation, is that somebody, high emotionality, or, too high, independence. So intentions were good, but this is what we're seeing, a combination of this and that, and they understand. So I don't need to say, what do you mean by emotionality? No, they understand, this is emotionality, this is affection, this is how correlation works, these are the effects. So they are very proficient at that, and it simplifies our conversation. It makes our conversations very precise. So when we talk about people, right? When we talk about people, we can be very precise, because we use specific words, and we are 100% sure that those words are interpreted in the very same way we're thinking about them. And then obviously the depth of our discussions about our people and newcomers, it's like on another level. it's on another level. So I would definitely recommend to have this kind of all-encompassing, comprehensive approach in getting, the top guys in the company on board early and having them 100% committed. Wojtek, from your experience, can you please share what contributed the most to cross-team adaptation of phase 5 insights and unexpected side effects? Well, you know, I, I talked about that. I mean, I don't know if there were unexpected side effects. So there were people who were like after that started kind of thinking about, what they should do next because they maybe saw something there that they hadn't seen before. So that was it. And for instance, people were also another side effect was that people now have better understanding of what are the cross-team differences. So maybe, there's no such thing as ideal candidate profile for all company, but maybe if you're in customer success or customer support, maybe you should have higher affection, right? Maybe if you're a deployment engineer, maybe, yeah, I mean, your life would be easier. Your work life would be easy if you have a high degree of control, right? So people understand that is different, so there's no one size fits all. So that would be my answer. And last but not least, I mean, again, going back to the time remark, it's never ending journey for us. So self-discovery, and so we repeat it and over and over and over again. So I'm going back to to people that I talked to 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and asking them, hey, do you want another session? Shall we discuss it and kind of reflect on the past year and kind of see how it reflects your personality and what has changed for you? It has become part of our DNA. So it's really, I mean, okay, Facet 5 has become part of who we are as a company, and it has become part of our employee value proposition. And we talk about it outside, and we like to think about it as our signature EVP experience. So again, we say to candidates that this is what they're going to encounter here, and yeah, and we sort of advertise it. So this is our strength, right? So I mean, because in most companies, similar to to us, there is this kind of very tunnel view of when people think about developing, especially engineering talent. So engineering talent, maybe let's give them very technical training. Let's not care about their emotional side or soft skills because it doesn't really matter, right? They need to write good code, period. Well, we think about it differently because we look at them more holistically. We see them as human beings, as colleagues, and again, at the end of the day, it's about yeah, it's about being engaged at work, but it's also about living a good life and being kind of having this mythical work-life integration where you really feel that you're in a good place in life at work, and and you just go to work every day smiling, and this is one of the things that we're trying to do as a company to make that happen. My advice to everyone here in the call would be, yeah, be yourself more with skill, and yeah, definitely Facet 5, I think, yeah, helps with that, being yourself more with skill, because it's not about changing yourself, about forcing the change. It's about being yourself more, but in a very skillful manner. So thank you, everyone. Um, what questions do you have? Comments, questions? Maybe you want to turn on your camera.
Wojciech, there was another one in the from Sean. Do most who take the profile feel it is an accurate depiction of themselves when they receive the results?
Where is it? I'm trying to find it.
It's just above Mirek's
Yeah,
question.
okay.
It's a two-parter.
Okay. Do most who take the profile feel it's an accurate depiction? Yes. So I would say, I always make this. I always tell them that it's highly accurate and very trustworthy in terms of psychometric qualities, and there are some people who kind of when they look at it say, yeah, I recognize 67% of myself, the rest I have to think about. And then what happens is that they talk to their wives, they talk to their partners, and they come back and say, yeah, 90% accurate. In 80-90% is good. Also, what is super important is that obviously, as part of this kind of initial feedback, I first kind of describe the model, ask them about, what is your self-perception, and then only reveal the results. And what I see is that the people that we have, for starters, they are very self-aware, right? So there's this initial self-awareness. So our people are really extraordinary, right? So it's probably about how we recruit people. So they are very open towards, experience, but also they have this initial self-awareness. So for them, when they see it, they are not very shocked because this is how they perceive themselves in most cases. And the second question, do you feel having lots of different personalities and levels of self-awareness profiling? Self-awareness, I would say from mid-range to very high. Personalities, yes, it's a very good question because um, there's a pitfall, right? And there is this big mistake that you can do when building a company like ours, which is the recruiting your clones or saying, yeah, we need everyone who's like him or like her, right? So for instance, what we're seeing, since we already have almost 70 people in, we see that we're in certain things. So for instance, what would be a good example? A good example would be that we are on average, again, on average, there's we have lower, emotionality measures as a company on average than the population, a global population, or Polish or German or American population, and the same goes for control. So significantly lower than in general population. And if you think about it, it makes sense because we're a startup company. That's the type of people that we attract. And by the way, it doesn't mean that we only want to attract people with lower control. No, because for instance, what we're now doing is that we're looking at our teams holistically. So for instance, we look at customer success team and say, hey, we have a lot of people who are very low on control. So maybe, when screening for new candidates, interviewing candidates, we should be thinking about hiring someone with higher degree of control or, higher emotionality, because we need more diversity in that team. And it would be safer for us and better for us as a team. Right. So this is what we are doing. But then again, it's also about the transparency. So when we talk to those individuals, we tell them, hey, so there's this concept of control, emotionality, and by definition, if you look at the normal curve, we're here as an organization, you're here, which means probably that you will feel friction when you join us. Are you ready for that? Do you know what it means? So we discussed that before that person joined. So we're very transparent, not only, painting the beautiful picture of it's going to be great, you're going to love it, and then they don't, right? It's about not creating false expectations, but this is what we're doing. Okay.
Any other
Yeah,
questions?
sorry. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I had a quick question in terms of when you're recruiting. Do you use the full profile or are you using the audition reports when you
Yeah,
recruit?
that's a very good question. Thank you. So usually the first part of the answer would be is when do we do it in the process? So we don't do it early. It's not for screening purposes. It's to after the first or second conversation, when we say this is a very interesting person, we want to go deeper with them, right? So this is for final candidates, maybe for final 2 or 3, right? And then the approach is usually I send them the spotlight report, which is kind of self-service, right? And I tell them, okay, we can catch up maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes over the phone if you want, if you have any doubts. But then I say, and especially, I do that to both, people who are our picks, so the ones that we're hiring, and sometimes we go through the full scale, full report and feedback session before they join even, but also to the ones who are runner-ups, who were rejected but maybe came in second and third. I tell them, because of the effort and the energy and the time we invest in the process, there's this option, where we go kind of full throttle and we go really deep into that. So if you want, we can schedule a feedback session. I'll give you another report, a longer report, but you need to spend another 90 minutes with them, with us, even though we can't offer you a job. Some people do decide and go for that. Some people don't. Obviously, we love people who still have the curiosity, because that's really the kind of folks that we're after.